Hey there guys, RTX guy here, and while I had planned a series about water cooling, overclocking, stress testing, all that sort of stuff to post next, I thought I would do a little break on that and put a short opinion piece on the Radeon VII, which was the latest GPU that was launched by AMD. Now, as a side note, that GPU is not completely an original new GPU. It is basically a repurposed Instinct card from data centers and such. So it is not built completely with gaming in mind, and that will reflect on the stats and specifications of the card. Uh, that said, that card has just launched a couple of days ago. It is priced, the MSRP is exactly the same as the NVIDIA RTX 2080. So that's kind of what you should compare it to because it's the same price. So you kind of have to compare performance to performance at the same price point because that's the direct competition. NVIDIA has been dominating the graphics card scene for quite a while now, with AMD completely unable to compete. Even though their CPUs are great, their GPUs have not really been up to par with NVIDIA's. So we were all kind of expecting, I guess, a very good card from AMD, or at least hoping for, because that would mean more competition from NVIDIA for NVIDIA, and it would also mean that, yeah, more competition. It will hopefully bring the prices down, which are massively overpriced, in my opinion, the RTX line, that is, and hopefully push the performance gains a bit further, which also have not been great in this last release of graphics cards. One thing worth mentioning from all the information that I saw is that they all have one point in common, which is the card seems to be performing okay, but the driver issues are completely widespread and they are very prevalent. And that is true even for the press driver version that reviewers got, which is a bit more developed, more advanced than the drivers that are actually on the retail product from the get-go and that are available right now. That includes things like black screens, crashes, restarts, as well as corruption of the driver itself and possibly of OS settings, so that you might have to reinstall the operating system. So the driver's issues are kind of a hot mess right now. I am not sure that as of the time that this video will be live, it has been addressed or not. One of the reviews that I saw actually got in the meantime, that was already like yesterday or at least, they actually got a new version of the driver, a beta version, that fixed most of those issues, even if not all. So, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's just that it's a few turbulent days following the immediate release of the card. The card is priced, at least at MSRP, is priced similarly to the RTX 2080, which is a direct competition, but how does it perform head-to-head against each other? Now, as we all know, the Radeon VII lacks DLSS and ray tracing, which are NVIDIA technologies and are not present in any other sort of way in AMD. I will go more on that later. Uh, as far as traditional performance goes, the Radeon VII seems to perform reasonably head-to-head, so not massively ahead, not massively behind in games, especially at lower resolutions. When you start at 1080p, they are slightly balanced, with the RTX pulling ahead in some cases. With high resolutions such as 1440 or even 4K, the higher you go, the better the Radeon VII performs in comparison to the 2080. This is because the Radeon VII has a lot of memory bandwidth and a lot of memory size, basically, and I mean VRAM. It has a lot more. It's the consumer graphics card with the most VRAM and the most memory bandwidth by a very fair margin, and that shows when you go up to higher resolutions. For those of us not going to 4K, that does not matter a lot, but it still performs reasonably head-to-head in lower resolutions, like I said. Now, this massive amount of memory and memory bandwidth is also one of the reasons why the card is priced as high as it is. It's not more expensive than the 2080, which is the competition. It's not, but it could be even cheaper if they hadn't gone overboard on the memory. Now, that is in part because it is not a purely gaming card, it is also a content creation card. And that is worth mentioning because if you are going to do any sort of content creation in a number of content creation tasks like video rendering, editing, all that sort of stuff, um, this card actually is pulling ahead of the 2080 by a fair margin. So it is kind of a hybrid card as well, and not just a purely gaming card. Considering I don't get review models to actually do my reviews, my channel isn't really that big. I'm not a big reviewer, so why would I be on a list like that, obviously? Um, I cannot really present you my own numbers and my own benchmarks or anything of the sort. So I'm just going by whatever I hear from reviewers that I trust, and it's a bit more of a personal opinion piece than an actual objective data crunching sort of presentation. But that said, what do we have to compare one card to the other? Performance-wise, they are somewhat similar. Sure, there is the driver issues, but we can expect them to be solved in time. Like I said, they might even already be solved by the time this video goes live. And there's also the case that the drivers might improve and might actually boost up their performance a little bit because all these settings that they are testing are stock settings. It's actually kind of unknown how well the card will overclock because the overclocking feature for the Radeon graphics cards is also not working properly. So it's impossible to tell right now if it will overclock better than the RTX 2080. So in terms of value wise, going by what we have now, they have around the same value in traditional uses, with the Radeon VII pulling ahead at higher resolutions and at content creation. Now, what is left to talk about then? The features that NVIDIA offers that Radeon and AMD do not, like ray tracing, like the LSS. But is that such makes that does that make such of a difference having or not having? Honestly, my personal opinion, not really, because RTX is a very new technology. There are not a lot of games that support it, and the ones that do, even the ones that do have ray tracing support, they have massive performance taxes on having ray tracing on. Uh, you are looking at games barely running at 60 FPS on high-end software because the 2080 Ti is as high as it gets for software quality. So are you going to take that sort of performance hit just to have ray traced games? At this point, I personally wouldn't. Mostly because if you are the type of gamer that will have a 2080 Ti, you probably are used to smooth performance, to high resolutions, to high refresh rates. You probably have a 144 hertz monitor at the very least. So yeah, you are taking like 5 steps back in terms of refresh rate and resolution and all that stuff and frames per second to have ray tracing on. So at this point, before ray tracing is a bit more developed, and that might take until the next generation of graphics cards even, or the one after, who knows. But until that point, I don't personally see the appeal in ray tracing other than for the sake of it being a new technology and being an early adopter and being, experiencing it. In terms of actually enjoying it, I don't personally I do not see the appeal, although I do see the promise in the future, just not in the present already. As for the LSS, that is a different story. The LSS does bring a lot of improvement in terms of improved frame rates on the games that support it, but there are also not many games that support it yet. That said, and although Radeon VII does not have included DLSS or anything of the sort, AMD has mentioned that it is possible to implement something like that through a driver update in the future on the Radeon VII. So it's not completely shut off the possibility of having something like that, although it is not there yet, and you shouldn't base your purchases on promises, obviously. Now, for the current prices, and I will actually let you see the prices right now in the Netherlands where I am. The Radeon 7 is mostly out of stock, pretty much everywhere, with only two types of boards here to board partners that have them, IS-ROC and Asus. They're selling it for 769 and 799, which is not horrible considering they are pretty reputable brands, both of them. So let's say 770 to 800. Right now, keep in mind that it has just launched. It is sold out pretty much everywhere. and there are still more partners to come and to launch their own boards. And once the demand boom from the launch has died down, the prices might actually drop a bit once the production also increases a bit. That said, for the GTX 2080, which is the competition we're comparing it to, you could get the part for 690 right now if you go with smaller board partners. However, if you are going to compare, for example, the cheapest Asus or ASRock, the difference kind of drops down by quite a lot. Keep in mind that these cards from these partners at this price for the RTX 2080, as you can see, it's a blower cooler with one fan, as opposed to the Radeon's three fan cooler design there. So you could technically get RTX 2080 for cheaper, although you are going to get less cooling capabilities on that card. If you are going to go for something that is both a bit more known and bit bigger brand, as well as better cooler design, because there are some cheaper ones here with three coolers, obviously, but I cannot look into every possible variation of the card, so I'm sticking it to the more renowned manufacturers. If you are going to go for a three cooler design from, or even two cooler, Asus with two coolers, 789, that's pretty much same price as here. So again, price is not really a massive difference between the two of them, even taking board partners into consideration. They kind of go head to head on that um, on that aspect. So to wrap things up, because it's just an opinion piece and I don't have much concrete to show you other than my own opinion, I was personally hoping for performance on the level of the 2080 RTX, which we did get somewhat. Although I was expecting it that hoping, not so much expecting, but really hoping for the sake of the market. I was hoping for a slightly lower price at the same performance or slightly better performance at the same price. Why is this? Because, like I said, NVIDIA has been dominating the market for years. There's a stagnation set in that they are free to raise their prices higher and higher and higher. That was seen in the last generation. And it's not so much that the prices are super high. You could easily say if you can't afford it, then it's not for you. But the thing is, you're paying more and more and more, and getting less and less and less returns. Because in terms of actual performance upgrades for traditional gaming, you don't see much. It's all piled up on the RTX and on the LSS, and we are expected to believe that it will be big in the future. And it might well be big in the future, I truly believe that. But it will be big in the future when these cards are no longer relevant, because I don't see it being usable at let's say fluid gaming with good resolution, good frame rates, good refresh rates. Don't see it being usable in the next few years, and by that time, then that card will be history. It will be a past generation already. So we are paying basically a massive premium for something that's not super useful right now. And that comes because they have no competition and they know that whoever wants the best cards will go to them no matter what and no matter the price. Now, if AMD would step up their game a bit and improve, there being competition, things might actually improve for us with both better performance by one company trying to outdo the other, or better pricing by them having to actually compete for the sales. Now, my hopes are that AMD, sorry, gets their driver game together and actually solves all these issues very quickly. And I hope that they do sell well. Uh, I'm not recommending go buy Radeon. That's not what I'm saying. Like I said, like you saw, the performance is kind of similar, although the RTX has some extra features. So I cannot really recommend over the other, because on one hand, I am against the whole RTX tax that we are being forced upon. On the other hand, there's driver issues on the Radeon right now, and it's impossible to tell how well it will overclock. So I cannot really recommend something for you to go get based on what I hope will happen. I cannot tell you go buy it because the drivers will get fixed. Yeah, I don't know that. So it would be unfair for me to do that and tell you to go do that. Uh, so that said, I cannot give you a recommendation between one and the other. What I can say is what I hope will happen. I hope that they will fix the drivers. I hope that they will have a nice sales share. Uh, I'm not saying put AMD on a pedestal because that's how you create the next Nvidia, and they'll probably act exactly the same. But some healthy competition would be nice for all of our sakes. So, without recommending one of them, what can I say? If you are looking to upgrade now, I would recommend waiting a few weeks and seeing how this all plays out and how the performance is with the actually polished drivers, not polished drivers, polished drivers, and see how Radeon 7 performs in comparison to the RTX, see how the prices fluctuate, and make your decision from there. If you do not have to upgrade right now, or if you can wait a little bit, I would actually wait a few months because remember, Radeon 7 is not Navi. Radeon 7 is a repurposed data center card that is being thrown out for gamers. It performs nicely enough for its price, sure, but it is not the new Navi GPU that we were promised. And that should still come later this year. And that one should be a pure gaming CPU, or at least, not a repurposed CPU. So with that in mind, that one might actually perform even better, and hopefully priced a bit more reasonably, because remember that a lot of the pricing tax on the Radeon 7 comes from the memory, and if the memory is not over the top on the Navi, because we don't need really, even at 4K, we don't really need all the memory that Radeon 7 provides. So the Navi might actually be a good choice, might be more powerful, might compete with the 2080 Ti actually, hoping at least as good or better. And it might be a better buy. So if you can wait with upgrading, I would wait and see. I know that there's always the next thing around the corner and eventually you have to upgrade, but there's nothing really new coming from NVIDIA for the next few months slash year or two, because this generation is pretty recent. So it's kind of the only thing coming for a while, Navi, I mean, and it's kind of, for me, I think it would be worth waiting and seeing what will come out of it, and then making my decision there. So, yeah, sorry that I don't have much to show in terms of benchmarks and review, but yeah, it's an opinion piece, and hope it has been useful for you guys, and that it has hopefully raised a few points that you might have not thought of or something when you were considering if you were going to go for these graphics cards or not. This has been Attic PC Guy. Uh, remember, no pre-orders, although it doesn't apply now. But remember, wait for the drivers to settle before making your decision, and have fun with your graphics card if you get one.